speaker, Jerry Whiting, I identified him as a historian for the 485th Bomb Group. I'm not sure that that's exactly the title that he wanted to be identified by, but he's going to cover whatever he wants to cover, but I call it the magic of preserving history. Jerry?
I know a lot of you don't know me, so I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the son of a tail gunner. I've been called the son of something else occasionally. But my dad was a tail gunner in the 485th Bomb Group, so that was how I developed my interest. And he was a pretty special guy. I think we're so lucky to have the fathers that we've had of this generation and the values that have been left with us to carry on. And so I got involved with the 485th, took my dad to a couple of reunions, and then started writing a story about him. And that became my first book. And so as I'd written this one book, and then I took an early retirement to write another book about crewmen who were shot down over Europe and what happened to them afterwards. And so now I've written several books about the 15th Air Force and one about some other people, and done a couple documentaries. So that's a little bit about my background, but I am the historian for the 485th Association. And one of my big things is trying to make connections with people. I love it when people like what I write, but it doesn't give me nearly the thrill of making a connection. And so many magical things happen when you start looking at history. And I was talking this morning to some people about that too, that no matter what you write about, I don't care if you write about making bridges, but if you get into it, or if it's your family history, but if you get into it, things happen you never could have imagined. And it's probably one of the best addictions you can have, because I think you do get addicted when you're looking at history. In my case, 70 years old, and different things happen that are almost frightening at times, because pieces start to fit together. And whenever I've talked to anybody that's written very much and done a lot of research, they all talk about this. And so you wonder why people keep writing and doing these things when they're not making a whole lot of money. I think it's those magical things happen. And so I wanted to relate primarily one story about the magic of it, to give you an example. And I would hope that the young people here, and it's great to see some young people here, will take away something from this and think, gee, maybe that really does happen. And I gave part of this presentation last night, so I gotta change the stories and make up some lies now, because some of the same people are here. Just kidding. But this story, this particular story I'm going to relate to you, is a story that was in my book, Don't Let the Blue Star Turn Gold. And I've got books here, not many, but if you're interested in talking with me afterwards, I'm happy to do that too, about some of these magical things that happen. But the story I'm going to talk to you about today involves a crew that was from the 45th Bomb Group that was shot down on October 16th, 1944. They were coming back from Linz, Austria, and they were losing fuel, and they made it as far as Yugoslavia. And Richard Bamey was the name of the pilot on the plane, and he was eventually shot down. He was shot down 3 times. The 3rd time he was killed. He kept going back for more, which just shows the stamina of these guys, and the rules that didn't necessarily let you go home just because you've been shot down and escaped. And so I met one of the men from this crew and decided I would write a story about the guy, about what happened to him. It was the 2nd time he was shot down. He'd never flown with this crew before, but as he told me, he was playing a little football with some of the guys the day before, and while he was playing football, he fell on another guy, and the guy's ankle broke. So the next day, mysteriously he was assigned as a fill-in gunner on the crew. And so he was the top turret gunner, and he told me this story about being shot down, being captured, and managed to escape the same day. And there weren't a whole lot of escapes, but when people escaped, I think most of them were within the first few hours where things weren't organized or they were being kept in a farmhouse or something. And that was the case with him, and he told me he was scared to death, but the guard came to his door that night, and he kind of pushed and hit the guard, the German guard, and ran off into the forest. And he said it was so dark that he could not see his hand in front of his face. He said it was pitch black, and he said he could hear some shooting when he got away. And he doesn't know if they were shooting at him, but he said, I was so scared, but it was so dark, I was running into things. And he said, as I was running, he said, I ran and I was tired. And he said, the fear is just something that just took over with him. And then as he's running down this road, he came upon these two beautiful women. These two beautiful teenage women. This is in Yugoslavia. It was near Zara, Yugoslavia. So some of you vets will know Zara, know that. And so he said it was an incredible thing that these beautiful young ladies found him. They were teenagers. He said, you know, I've never seen women so beautiful in my whole life. And of course my background's in law enforcement. I was a cop for a lot of years. I'm thinking if he couldn't see his hand in front of his face, and he wasn't in a bar at 2 in the morning, how does he know these women were beautiful? And my wife kind of keeps me on track sometimes, and that's a nice way of putting it. And she said, well, you know, if someone saved your butt, they'd be beautiful no matter how they looked. And I go, you're right. So here I've got this story, and I wrote the story, and my wife said, I love the story. She said, what a touching story. Well, there were 2 young girls that found him, and they buried him in a hole. Or they put him in a hole, and they put sticks on top of it. And I thought, well, is it just his story? But I found his escape statement in the records that verified exactly that. He didn't say they were beautiful in the escape statement, but I did debriefing. They put him in this hole and covered him with sticks. And he didn't know exactly what was going on, but he trusted these girls and just stayed. And a few hours later, some men came and got him back to the coast, and got him out to an island, and then a British PT boat picked him up and got him back to Italy. And I mean, it was a wonderful story. My wife read the draft, and she goes, I love it. What a heartwarming story. And she said, the fact that it's true, you know, and it's pretty evident that it is true because of the research you did on it. She said, it's just so wonderful. And I go, well, I don't like it. She goes, what? She says, really, I think this is something that, she said, especially women are going to relate to this story, you know. And I said, well, I don't like it. And she said, why? I said, you know, in one of my other stories, the B-24 crashed when it crashed, it killed a teenager who was out in the field working. This guy was the only guy I could find from the crew alive, the only one still alive. He didn't even see the plane. He said that he was in his parachute and he was being shot at from the shoreline. And he said that he closed his eyes and made himself as small as possible. When I said, well, what happened to the plane? He goes, I don't know. It flew off without me, but I don't know where it went down. But he said, I knew we were out of fuel. And he said, I have no idea what happened to the plane. So I was a little concerned about that. I thought, who were these girls? You know, who were these girls that risked their life for a man they didn't know? Teenagers. And what happened to them? You know, was the village shelled as a result of that? Did they come looking? They must have known, because he landed in the water and had to swim for about 3 hours. When he got to shore, shortly after that was when he was captured. But the Germans had to know somebody helped this guy. So my wife said, stop. She said, you worry too much about that. the readers read your story. They don't think about all these things that you're thinking about. She said, you were a cop for too long, and it gets in the way sometimes of telling a good story. So she wasn't happy with me. So a couple hours later, I get a call from North Carolina. And there's this young couple, Steve and Laura Sharp. And they were doing my photo work for me, enhancing my photos for the book. And Laura is so good at this stuff, and she has been doing our newsletter for the 485th. Very talented woman, very caring person, very helpful to me. And she wasn't charging me anything, she believed in me. And here she's doing all this work, hours and hours, to do the best job she can with these old photos. And so she called me and she goes, hey, I saw something on the internet where some Croatian kid found a plane in the water this week. And the Croatian kid, his name is Shime. And he found this plane in the water and they're trying to ID it. And you're always helping people with your database, and I know you can help him. So, and he's so excited, and apparently his grandfather saw this bomber go into the sea. And so, he's had an interest, and he persuaded these deep sea divers, or guys that could dive, and they found this plane. Now they want to know more about it. And it has nothing to do with you, but maybe if you help this kid, maybe he could do something for you sometime. And I go, Laura, I'd be happy to do it, but I gotta finish my story. And when I get my story done in the next few days, I will help you. I really appreciate it. Well, I could tell that I kind of hurt her feelings because she was so excited. Well, I hang up. My wife said, who is that? I said, it was Laura. And she said, what were you talking about? And I told my wife. And she said, well, just go and get the information. I said, well, it's going to take me a while to go through my database to track it down. And she said, Laura's saving you all this money. She's doing all this work for you, and you can't take a break. And I go, I got to finish this story. It's not right. And I think I heard the door slam going into the bedroom as I went back to my story, really frustrated. So I continued to try to revise it so that it, that it just sounded better, and it didn't sound so much like something was missing. At about 1 or 1:30 in the morning, the guilt overwhelmed me. And that's Billy Culver up there. That's the guy that shared the story with me. But the guilt overwhelmed me, and I knew that if I was going to be able to keep sleeping in the house, that I ought to see what I could do. So I go into my database, and I go, well, yeah, the serial number shows it is a B-24. It's from the 15th Air Force, which I assumed it was, unless it had gone down much earlier. And I go, it's from the same bomb group I'm writing about. I go, well, but a lot of bombers went down, The vets here will say, yeah, we lost a lot of bombers in Yugoslavia, coming back from these tough missions. And then I go, uh-oh, it's the story I'm writing. And I just go, it just sent chills up my spine. And I'm going, this can't be. And I'm rechecking things. So I woke my wife up, and she always enjoys being awake at about 2:30. But I was hoping to be able to sleep in the same room that night. So I woke up my wife, and I told her, and she did. She literally started screaming. She goes, it's got to stop. This has got to stop. And I go, what? And she said, it always happens to you. These things always happen. And she said, it scares me. She said, it just has to stop. She said, I just can't take it. She said, whenever you get to where you can't get anything, something happens. You get an email or a phone call, and the pieces will fit. Something, you'll get something. She says, I can't, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but it just has to stop because I can't take it. And I said, well, I don't know how to stop it. So, do you want to advance the next slide? This is Shime Lisica. He was the young Croatian college student. Okay, nice young kid. So I emailed him at that point, And I didn't want to give him anything without making sure he was legit. I just thought this can't be true. There's somebody knows I'm writing the story and is posing as somebody else, and this can't be. This is just too coincidental. So I emailed him, and he wrote me back and gave me the information. You can show the next picture. And this is one of the photos he sent me. Okay, the plane is in about 150 feet of water, about a half mile off the coast of what was formerly known as Zara. It's Zadar now. And then he subsequently sent me something else. Would you like to, if we can show that now?
Yep.
So that's what he sent me. Pretty convincing that he had the right plane.
Yep.
So based on the information he provided me and I provided him, he asked about where the plane had gone down, and or where the pilot had bailed out, not where the plane had gone down, because he found the plane. And I described it for him, and he said, "I know, that's the Bay of Zaton. The town of Privlaka is there, and this little village, and I think that's where it is. I know exactly where it is." So he said, "I'm going to go over there now that I know what this guy said. See if we can find this girl." So he went over there and started asking around, and found out that this girl named Maria had talked about rescuing an American airman. And so he went and knocked on her door, and one evening, on a Sunday evening, and he said, "Can I come in and talk to you? I have some questions." She said, "Sure." So he went in, and she and her husband were sitting there, and she said, "How can I help you?" And he said something like, "I bring you greetings from America." And she said, "We don't know anybody in America." And he said, "How about that American you rescued during World War II?" And she began crying, because for the last few years, she talked to her husband and talked to her son and said, "I wonder whatever happened." She actually rescued 2 airmen, another guy from this crew, earlier in the day, because this guy was farther out to sea. And the other guy, she put him in a dress, one of her few dresses, and sent him walking. He was a small guy, and sent him walking down the road. And then he moved to San Francisco after the war. I shouldn't have said that. No. So she was very emotional about this whole thing, and then he showed her Billy Culver's picture, and she just held it to her chest and was really sobbing hard, and then showed the crew photo, and was able to pick out the other guy she rescued from the crew photo, and it was the right guy. So
did they know what happened to him?
yeah, he made it back safely too. I wasn't able to find him, but yeah, we know that he lived a fairly full life after that, but I couldn't find him. I wish I could have even found his family, and I'm usually good at doing that, but I wasn't able to. So based on that, Bill Culver wasn't in real good health, but he did send he did send gifts to her, and he sent his grandkids to thank her. So pretty nice story. So I felt like, the book is done, but I had it in the back of my mind, I need to meet this woman. I need to see what would possess a 16-year-old girl to risk her life, not once, but twice, to save a stranger's life. So I went over there to Croatia and to thank her myself. And you want to show the, okay. Also what we found out was that there was that the pilot's life was saved by this guy, Nikita. And so, and Shimei found him still alive, and he was a partisan, working with in plain clothes, kind of an undercover partisan at the time. And he'd saved the pilot's life and got him back to, you know, and Bill didn't know what happened to the pilot. He knew he was rescued, but didn't have the whole story. So we put that together, and I wanted to meet him too. So I went to Croatia, and that's me there with Maria and Nikita, and then the older Maria's husband, Shimei, who was also a partisan. These people lived about 2 miles apart, never met each other, never knew each other's stories because it was a secret during the war.
Yeah.
And so they were happy to meet, and we put them together. So I felt pretty good. Again, I like it when these things come together, and they don't often fit this way. So one would think that's the end of the magic, but it wasn't. Fast forward another year and a half, and I go over to Croatia again. I'd been in Italy to do an event with some Italians that had written a book, and to speak at an event. And I won't go into detail on it, but I'd been really, really sick, and I shouldn't have been traveling, but I had to go. So when I was in Italy, Shimei invited me back to Croatia again. He said, just to heal. You know, I'd had a bunch of surgeries and stuff, and he said, you need to get better, so you come and stay with me and my family on the coast. So I agreed to do that. But before I left him the previous time, he took me to the Zagreb airport. He said, Jerry, our story's finished. Isn't it neat? We did it. He said, look what we did. And I go, hey, I'm really proud, and I'm going to brag about this. But we did good. And he said, the story's over. And I said, Shimei, the story's not over. He said, yes, it is. Your book's out. I said, but the story's not over. I said, the story's gotten bigger. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, here you got this burnout cop from California and this Croatian college student, you know, working together, and we put this story together. So we're part of the story now. Whether or not we want to be, we're part of this story. And he said, no, I don't see it that way. The story's done. I said, okay. So here I am going back again. And when I was sitting, you know, in front of his house right on the beach, and I'd been there a day or two, he said, we need you to just take it easy here, but is there anything you'd like to do? And I said, I want to go visit my girlfriend, Maria. And I call her my girlfriend and my wife too, because I mean, I'm just so, the strength of this woman is just incredible. The inner fortitude and just being in the same room with her, it just, I see the strength and inner strength in this woman. He said, you really want to see Maria? I go, yeah. But this time, I want to talk to her husband too. We ignored him the last time. And here he's sitting there like a bump on the log, and we're giving his wife all the attention, and he was a partisan. So, you know, out of courtesy, I want to talk to him a little bit. He goes, okay, fine. So we go over there. And, you know, they're happy to see us. And as I'm sitting there with them, I told Shimei, I said, ask him, since he was a partisan, ask him how long he was a partisan. And it turned out he'd been with the partisans for about 3 years, and he didn't know his wife then. And he was operating just a few miles away, but he didn't know his wife until after the war. So this is all well and fine, and we're going on, and I said, did you ever, I know there weren't any, or very few Americans on the ground, the OSS types and stuff, but did you ever see the Americans during the war? And he said, well, just the pilot I rescued. Shimei looked over at me and smiled and kind of nodded like, I get it. Okay, the story's not over. So later we talked about it. it's like, how do you, how are we gonna find, he said, do you think there's a chance we can identify this fighter pilot? And I go, well, what's on our side is it happened in December of 1943, and there weren't many operations going on over Yugoslavia. It wasn't like the 15th Air Force was just being formed, and so I think there were fewer planes, so we have a better chance. And he described this plane as landing in a field, and there was snow on the ground. And he said it was December, around the middle of December, and I go, well, that's going to help. And it was a single-engine fighter, and it did crash land. And he said he was in a pitched battle with his men, and he was like a sergeant, and he was commanding his men, and they were fighting the Germans about a half-mile away or so when they saw this plane come in low, and they knew it went down, so he left the battle with a few of his men, and he was riding on a horse. And they go out, and he finds the field, and he comes riding up on his horse, and he said, we also took the guns, or a couple of the guns off, because the plane had machine guns on it. And he said the guy was really cold because he was wearing a light jacket, a light leather jacket, and here it was wintertime, what's he, So, do you know his name? No. So, afterwards, Shime said, let's work on it. So we did, and I thought, I identified it as a P-40. And there weren't many P-40s, that went down in Yugoslavia either. So, doing some more checking, I thought, well, okay, I think he was in this fighter group, and I contacted their historian. The guy said, well, yeah, he's in our records, but he's not part of our association. I said, well, here's his two wingmen that day. If I had the right guy, here's the two guys flying with him. Do you know about them? No, they were in the group, but no, he said, there aren't, we have such a small association, but no. He said, I don't think I can help you, so can you put the word out? He said, well, I'll send a few emails. So, a couple weeks later, 6 in the morning, a phone call. Is this Jerry? Yeah. Hi, this is Dick Chapman calling from Syracuse, New York. I'm that fighter pilot you're looking for. And that's Dick there with his rescuer. And I said, well, I need to talk to you to find out we're talking about the same thing. He goes, yeah. He said, I didn't bail out. I just put the plane in, and I don't think I was shot down. I think I had a mechanical problem. He said, I don't think I was being shot at. I didn't know it anyway. And he said, but the darndest thing happened. This guy came riding up on a horse. And with these guys running after him. He said, you don't see that very often. And I said, no. And he said, they're encouraged me to get out of there, and I can hear shooting from far away. And he said, then one of them took his rifle and propped it up, and they lifted the wing up and used the rifle to prop up the wing, and these guys are removing a machine gun from the wing. So the story's full. And Dick couldn't go over there. He wasn't in good health either, but he did send gifts to the family and establish a contact with them. So my point in all this is that the history doesn't end. Okay, you might think it does, but anything, it doesn't have to be military history, but anything you get into, these things will happen. And all you gotta do is talk to somebody that's done it. Talk to a historian or a writer. But whatever you do, preserve the history so we don't lose it. And we all have a story, and it's nice to see so many of the next generation here supporting the vets, and it's a wonderful experience. So that's what I've got to say, and thank you very much. And I'll be around if you have any questions.